What have I done? I'm kind of losing it here, guys. Full-blown lost episode. I'm glad I checked it at the end. I just recorded an entire episode, realized that my mic was plugged in yet turned off, meaning I had no sound. So I'm gonna have to go and do this whole show over again, and I am so upset because I was so happy with how the last one came out. So here I go. I'll start again, and I'll try to act surprised when I taste these beers for the first time. What I wanted to talk about was a show that I've been wanting to do for a while, and that is something that just goes a little bit into these beer societies that are out there. And I don't mean kind of beer clubs like the Beer Temple has, the Beer of the Month Club, stuff like that, kind of plug our Beer of the Month Club. If you're interested, get in touch with me. I promise I won't make this show into a commercial. That's not what it's supposed to be. What I'm talking about are the beer clubs as wine club, and that is, you pay a membership fee and then you get access to limited beers that most people would not have access to. The archetype for this model, as far as I know, and certainly the most successful and the one that a lot of other breweries are now copying, hold on, no, people are coming into stores now, obviously open because I screwed everything up. Is the Bruery, anyway. And I mean the Bruery, B-R-U-E-R-Y, not B-R-E-W-E-R-Y. They kind of took on this wine club model, and I think it might be because they are so close to wine country, and really have turned it into something that a lot of people are copying that has been very, very popular. In fact, they have to limit how many people are in their club. Basically what you do is you pay an annual membership fee, and then you get a certain amount of free bottles, and then a certain amount, and then a general discount, basically. And it's not cheap. It's like $300 a year, and then you get, I think, 9 bottles and some swag out of it, and then a discount. And you also, if you go to the brewery, the actual brewery, you can get some limited growler fills if you're there. But it's like $300 for 9 bottles. So just the beer, you're paying $33 and change per bottle. So this isn't cheap, this stuff. And then now they have even like a super reserve society called a hoarder society, which you have to be, I think, invited to. And that's like double the money. It's like $700 or something a year. It's a lot of money. And I think from a brewery standpoint, see, I don't know how I feel about them. I've never signed up for one. I don't know why it's necessary. I tend to feel that there's so many great beers sitting out there on the shelf already, even limited beers that are just out there, that I don't necessarily need to tie myself down to a beer that I don't know how good it's going to be, because some of these beers are going to be experiment beers. But from the brewery's standpoint, or a brewery's standpoint, it's a very good idea. I think it makes a lot of business sense. They're getting a big influx of cash right up front that they then can spend however they like, rather than spending a big amount of cash up front to put out these beers and barrel them and age them, and then get your returns as they kind of trickle in. They get a big upfront fee because you kind of sign up for the club. There's an enrollment period, and they get all the money, and then they can kind of use that to do what they want. So it makes a lot of sense for them, but my question is, does it make sense for the consumer to do these things? I tend to think that if these beers were so much better than the shelf versions of the beer, that they will show up on the shelf. It does not seem to make sense to me if a beer is economically feasible, and if you're already charging $33 a bottle on average for it, it seems like you could charge that at retail as well. Why not just put these on the shelf and put your best beers, if they are that much better, on the shelf so people can try them, and it kind of builds your brand. I think there's a lot of exclusivity. I think there's a lot of rarity. And these beers are certainly exclusive and rare, but are exclusive rare beers better? I can probably find, an Eastern European lager that's exceedingly rare, is only available in one village and has a tiny output, but is it any good? That's what I wanted to do today. And what I've done is taken a shelf example and a Reserve Society example of basically the same beer, and I wanted to try them side by side. What will this show? I didn't know. And I'm talking in the past tense because I've already tasted them. I'm going to taste them again. But I've taken Oude Tart, which is a shelf beer. It's a seasonal from them, a limited release, and Oude Tart with Cherries, which is one of their Reserve Society beers. And I just wanted to see how they taste. So Oude Tart is a beer that was very much, I'll show you what I was mentioning before. People have come in and they've got all these crazy contraptions to make sure you don't bend the bottle cap if you want to keep the bottle cap, and all these specialized bottle openers. And I had a guy come in the other day from a brewery, and he had a bottle opener made out of a bike crankshaft, and it was like this long and looked really ridiculous. And I said, that's a pretty big bottle opener just to be carrying around with you. Don't you have one that fits in your keychain? He said, well, this one doesn't bend the caps, look. And he opened one. I said, hey, look at this. And I took the one on my keychain, popped a quarter on top of it, and opened it up, and it doesn't bend the cap then. So there's a little pro tip for you. It works pretty much with any bottle opener. So, but getting back to what I was talking about, Oude Tart was a beer that I had heard about for years back when they just first opened the brewery out of Orange County, California, Placentia, California. They make a lot of really nice barrel-aged beers, barley wine, stout, and also sour, so anything that you would typically age in a barrel. And I had heard about it, and then I was at the World Beer Cup Awards, and it won a gold medal at the World Beer Cup Awards in 2010, and then it repeated in 2012. They have the World Beer Cup every 2 years. And the beer is a really awesome Flemish red, and it's aged in barrels. So I wanted to, give this one a taste. This is last year's 2012's that I've been aging in my cellar. So, looking at the beer, it's a really nice kind of reddish brown, kind of a nut brown color. And on the nose, I was getting kind of like a pineapple note, or I'm getting like a kind of a pineapple-y note, some of that like pineapple juice, like that you get in the small cans, the syrupy stuff. It's not quite nectar, but it's like a thick, viscous juice. And absolutely some acetone, some vinegar, some acetic qualities to it, some like red wine vinegar, and also some acetone as well, which I'm not as in love with. In addition to like a fruity cherry note, but really that acetone, once I get it in my nose, it's hard for me to get out, and someone's coming in and I'm gonna stop. We're just gonna have to deal with that a little bit on this episode. So on the Oude Tart, it does have a woody, tannic note to it as well. Just a woody, grainy note. But it's funny, I mean, it's a little bit of like a rose petal, a little bit of an acetone, and it's a flaw maybe as much in me as anything else, but once I get it, it's really hard for me to get past it. But it's interesting, so you got some of the pineapple and some of that acetic note, some of the vinegar, and then also some of those acetone qualities as well. And then after that, I get some of those other subtleties, the other fruit, the cherry and stuff, the barrel. On the palate, I don't get those same acetone notes. Definitely acetic. And now, as this is my second time shooting this, I'm already getting some of this like acid reflux. So it's piercingly tart and sour. There's definitely some more lemon juicy, lactic style acid as well as the acetic acid. I get like a more cherry note. I get a little more of the barrel as well. It doesn't have the funk that you would get in like a goose or something like that. It doesn't have that same barnyardy quality. It's a very focused, very focused tartness to it, but it's very tart. Somewhat light-bodied as well. It's not thick, it's a fairly thin-bodied beer. And man, it's tart. I've just had my second, sip of about this big now, or third overall, I guess. And it's getting to me already. So I'm gonna go on this one 89, and it's mainly because of those flaws. I like the beer. It's maybe a little bit too tart for me without something to balance it with. And the acetic note ain't necessarily my favorite, and that acetone, it's hard for me to get past. But overall, it's a solid beer. I guess it's a good 89. It's just some of those notes, I'm really not loving. So, Oude Tart with cherries. This is the 2013 batch. It's a different batch, but it's the same beer, and they added cherries to this one. So, cherries added. Yeah, so I think they just threw in the cherries. I don't necessarily think it's cherry juice. So this one, a little darker. It's got much more of that nut brown mahogany note to it with some reddish highlights, and a little bit more of carbonation, a little bit more foam as well. It's not red, it's not bright red, it's become a little bit darker in this case. Now, this beer smells much better. It doesn't have that same acetone note to it. It still has some of the acetic qualities, but not as much of those either, of the vinegar. It's definitely there, but it's toned down a little bit. I'm getting more of a lactic acid note here. That not being there, and I was saying, I was kind of focusing on it, allows some of these other aromatics to come forward. I'm getting a little bit more of a spiced character, a little bit of the wood, and I think that's maybe where some of these cookie spices that I'm getting are also coming from. A little bit of like sour cherry juice. But this style has so much cherry-like qualities to it to begin with, I don't know if I would necessarily pull out cherries here, which you don't need to. If it has cherries and it adds something to it, but I wouldn't say that's cherry, that's fine, It doesn't need to be like a Jolly Rancher on the nose. Highly tart, maybe a hint of sweetness, but really not that much. Very much lacking some of those other flaws that I found in this one. I'm getting some tannin and cherry, and it reminds me of like a cherry skin or a fruit skin, like a plum skin. If you ever just kind of peeled off the skin with your teeth from a grape or a plum or a cherry and just eaten it, you get kind of that, some of that notes that you would almost get from a dry red wine or like a tea that you maybe steeped too long and your teeth start to stick to your lips. Those are the tannins in a beer. And I'm definitely getting some of those. A little bit of cherry juice, but it's subtle. I think this beer is definitely put together better, but I think that's the base beer. I don't necessarily think adding cherry juice to this beer would make this beer as good as this beer. I think the base beer here is better. And it kind of throws off my comparison a little bit. Really solid beer. It's tart. It's got that sour cherry vibe going on. It's lacking some of these flaws, which to me elevates it more so than the addition of that cherry. I think a lot of the cherry would probably come through in this beer without some of those acetone notes in it. So for this guy, I'll go 92. And it's funny, I was saying in the last episode, it's kind of appropriate that it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted these beers to be the same, but this one has cherry added to it. And although they are the same beer, they're from different years, and this is a much better batch of it. So I like this more, but I don't know. But I want to try this year's Oude Tart versus it. And, I just didn't have it. That's probably what I should have done, but I didn't. I didn't expect it to go this way. But like I said, it's kind of appropriate. Are these reserve societies right? I don't know. Are they right for you? are you willing to take a risk? Because it easily could have been reversed. Yeah, so there you go, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this show. I apologize if I was rambling a little bit, but this is my second go round, and it's hard for me to be like, oh my God, this beer doesn't have that flaw, but I already knew that. There you have it, guys. Thank you so much, as always. You know, I try to do different things here. I try to not just do a simple taste this beer and say what it tastes like and go on to the next beer. I want to change it up. I want to do brewery profiles, specific beers, blind tastings, styles, and you know, stuff like this. So if there's anything that you've been wanting to see, or any questions you've had about beer in general that you think maybe I could address via a show, let me know. I mean, I've done book reviews in the past. It doesn't even need to be beer necessarily. Please let me know. I really want to do shows that you guys want to see and answer some questions. Maybe just look into them for myself. Maybe I have the same questions as you. So there you go, guys. Someone's coming in. No, they're not. Fake out. There you have it, guys. Thanks again so much. 89.92. Really, I think an off batch of Oude Tart, which is a shame. It's funny, it won World Beer Cup this year, this 2012 year. This bottle wouldn't have won. I'm telling you that right now. But anyway, guys, there you go. Those of you who are in Chicago can now come in and try for their own, for yourself. See how much you guys like it. Drop me a line, rate me on iTunes. I always appreciate that. Or just shoot me an email, leave a comment on craftbeertemple.com. Guys, thank you so much. Until next time, I've got some exclusive Reserve Society beer to drink. And hey, I hope you do too. Cheers.